Thank you. All right. Members, do you have any questions of Director Kent? Any members? Senator Pan.
Thank you so very much, and I want to thank both Senator Hernandez and Director Kent for the hard work on this. I know how difficult, well, I probably don't know how difficult, but I can imagine how difficult it's been to bring it so far, and I want to just express my appreciation. I think we've seen some draft language, which I know that we're probably still working on. I appreciate the definition of excluded plan, so I appreciate that. But I think that it's important that, as you know, some of the comments people made earlier, that we are trying to fill a hole that's been generated, and we need to do that. And in fact, just recognizing, because this involves federal matching funds, that the actual hole to our economy and the people that are being served is about twice as large. So so we may look at it from how much it, you know, what we have to do on the state budget, but just recognize that that impacts the overall economy. We're talking about jobs. I mean, this money doesn't just, I mean, it goes to pay for nurses and clinics and buildings and rent and clerical staff and so forth. And those are jobs that people perform to actually provide services to people who actually need those services. It's not make work. Hopefully no one will imagine that. And certainly we talked about the service for DD, and you know, it's not just, and we have to recognize it's not just, you know, it's jobs for those people to provide services to people who really need them. And so I think it's really important we close the deal, as they say, and and restore the whole, and that we act. And I think that's been mentioned by some of my colleagues as well. This is, I mean, we can nitpick stuff, but it is time to act. I appreciate the plans coming to the table and helping work out, but we need to close the deal and get this done. And I just want to thank you so much for your work to date, and I look forward to being able to voting for a deal where we and get everyone together and make it happen. So thank you.
Okay. Any other questions, Director Kent? Senator Bell.
I'd like to find out if the administration supports including the Department of Developmental Services in the bill that, in terms of the MCO tax. You know, what is your position on that?
So, you know, my position at this point is I'm trying to fill the hole that I have been tasked with filling. I've got about a $1.3 billion target that I'm needing to fill, and so I think that the urgency on my part, especially, is the fact that Medi-Cal has about $1 billion loss that come January when we're developing a budget. I would have to find that somewhere, and that would not be really pleasant. And so, you know, from where I sit today, I'm more interested in filling the hole as opposed to trying to negotiate where the money's spent. There will be money left over, and we acknowledge that it was originally intended as part of an agreement that we had on the 7%. But again, my first and foremost concern is obviously with the program that I am operating, and it's a $1.1 billion hole that I need to solve right away.
Do you favor legislation that we're earmarking money for the developmental disabilities at 10%? Do you favor that?
You know, I think that we are, again, from my department perspective, as opposed to the administration, which is obviously going to negotiate with the legislature more broadly on this issue, is I'm solely focused on getting this MCO tax revenue secured. And then it's a discussion, obviously, between the legislature and the Senate and the Assembly as to how that revenue is apportioned. But again, my primary focus is on filling my Medi-Cal.
So you have
budget.
no position on, or you're not supporting. Sounds like if you don't make a statement saying you're supporting, I mean, the language for me is that you're not supporting putting the money into the Department of Developmental Services.
I think it's open for discussion. You know, we work with Department of Finance and others on general fund allocations, and so I have to be, you know, quite honest. I'm primarily focused on fixing my revenue hole, and then how the rest of the money is spent is going to be a negotiation between the administration broadly, including the Department of Finance as well as the legislature.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, I want that issue resolved before we approve this legislation. I think we need to guarantee in the legislation that the 10% is included.
Are such amendments being considered, Senator Hernandez?
As I said, he has them, we're looking at them, we're short of the 10%, but as I stated earlier, this is my priority and my commitment. As Ms. Kent mentioned, her obligation is to fill the hole. If we don't have the money, we can't even have the conversation. So the priority is filling the hole, and the plans will come up with some concern, but I can, after they leave or when they're still up, I can kind of tell you where we've started and where we're at, and it's a lot better than where we started. And then I think it's incumbent upon us as the legislature to make it our priority to the administration that this is what we want. So there's obviously, we got to get the money first, and then here's our priority. Because without the money, no priority means anything. Doesn't mean a thing.
Senator McGuire, a question.
Thank you so much. And I appreciate that. I think this is where some of the frustration is, and I also know you are not trying to weigh one or the other. When the special session was called, we had 3 items that we needed to be able to tackle, and expectations were created. Medi-Cal, disability services, and transportation. Right. So we're now less than 48 hours before we're supposed to adjourn. And I understand that we need to be able to backfill Medi-Cal. We're going to be worse off than where we started if we don't get this fixed. But that is a clearly stated priority. We're 15 years down the road now when it comes to the issue of disability services. Mm-hmm. We are shutting developmental centers now and having some of the most medically fragile go into the community. And we can't even keep providers who are caring for the most medically fragile or those who have mental health now. And I think that is why there's, I don't want to speak for everyone, but I think the frustration of we have recession-era cuts just to be able to keep up, plus an additional influx of individuals who are moving from the developmental centers into the community, and we can't even get a commitment. But we have a commitment on being able to backfill for Medi-Cal, but we should have just as strong a commitment, and I'm at, even if it's at 7.5%, to be able to have that first down payment, if you will. And I think we need to be able to commit to that. And I guess I don't understand the debate if we're looking at a $1.3 billion of how we can't guarantee those dollars both for Medi-Cal as well as DD.
Yeah, and I totally agree.
And I'm just looking at the administration, though, as well, because and again, I know Mr. Hernandez, you are all over this, and we had a conversation yesterday. But I just, from the administration's point, we all called this together. We can't leave this without a commitment, right?
Agree. I mean, we are committed to working with you, absolutely.
So, and again, just going down this road, so committed to working, is that committed to working to find a solution to be able to fund both?
I'm committed to getting you the revenue so that we can have the conversation.
So committed to the revenues when it comes to Medi-Cal and DD?
However the revenue is secured and the extra that is created through the MCO tax, we're committed to having the conversation with you about how it needs to be spent.
So that's going to get back to Mr. Hernandez of guaranteeing that commitment is followed through upon within the legislation. Because we can't go down the road any longer, particularly with the transitions that we're seeing with the most medically fragile of several thousand now entering into the community.
So, Senator McGuire, let me reiterate my firmness and my resolute by putting this in statute, that if the allocation is there will be a bill that has that in statute that says this is where it's going to go. And I would think that we as legislators want this as a priority, and the option is to sign it or veto it.
You're absolutely right. I appreciate the work, Mr. Hernandez, and again, we're here because of the hard work on your behalf, along with the administration. I think that we all just want the solution. Thanks.
Mr. Chair.
No, thank you.
Thank you. Just want to echo the comments of Senator McGuire. Medi-Cal obviously is very important resources for the developmentally disabled, and also making sure that we don't forget IHSS 7% restoration,
Yes.
which is very critical. And so while we're talking about priorities, that is part of the priority, and if you can speak to that specifically, making sure that we don't, as we are doing our duty, if you will, to take care of the most vulnerable, and those are seniors who are, by the way, the most fragile. And can you comment to the IHSS component?
Sure. So in some ways, the DD population and the IHSS population, they are one and the same with Medi-Cal, right? Medi-Cal in many cases is serving both.
We were not in the discussion. The IHSS was not specifically addressed. So I just want to put that on the record, that's part of the component, and if you can speak to that.
Sure. So the revenue that we have put as our target, so the 1.3 that we came out with in January and still has to be solved for, is we agreed to restore the 7%. That's about $240 million, I think is the amount. And so our entire time that we've been talking on the MCO tax, that amount has been part of the overall calculation. Obviously, we know that the legislature is equally concerned about DD. The revenue that we have raised through the MCO tax, or at least that we're attempting to raise through the MCO tax, has included the IHSS 7%. So to the extent that there is a indication or a desire to spend that money in a different way, that is a conversation that has to be had, obviously, between the administration and the legislature. But it has been part of the January proposal, is how we propose to spend it.
And so, thank you, Ms. Kemp. And then to Senator, Mr. Chairman, can you elaborate on the commitment of IHSS component?
Yeah, that is absolutely a priority as well. I mean, that would go without saying.
Said. Thank you. Thank you.
Senator Pan.
Thank you. I think, certainly we need to be sure all three components are addressed, right? DD, IHSS. We have, that's what this special session is about. And I think, and I can't read the governor's mind, but they're all interlinked, right? You can't, if you don't have the Medi-Cal access with the specialty services, person with developmental disabilities, they're going to get the service. If you don't have the IHSS, take care of them at home. If you don't have the regional centers. So I want to appreciate that Director Kent is the director of the Department of Healthcare Services, not the one who's responsible for is trying to put together so that we actually have the revenue. And I want to thank again Senator Hernandez. I think there's nothing to, I wouldn't say divvy up, but there's nothing to argue about until we actually get the revenue. So we need to get that done. We need to have commitments from everyone here on both sides of the aisle that they'll support getting the revenue so we can talk about how we're going to serve the different populations. And it is certainly very important that they're interlinked. So we can't leave DD behind. We can't leave IHSS behind. We need to be sure they're all addressed. People have gotten cuts or no increases for over a decade in many different areas when it comes to health and human services. And it's time for us to step forward. Let's fill the hole, because we have a hole. We're not moving forward, we're filling a hole. So at least we're not going backwards. And then let's keep marching forward. And I know that's back to the tobacco tax and so forth. So, but certainly, I appreciate that the IHSS is extremely important that we address the 7% cut. We need to get DD out And we need to actually ensure access. It's not about payment rates, it's really about access. And we need the revenues to do that so that people can get the services that they deserve from the state. And I again want to express my appreciation to the author and the director for trying to come up with solutions so we actually have some resources to work with to achieve those solutions.
Thank you.
Any more questions of members before we go now to the rest of the proponents out there? Okay. All right. Thank you, Director Kent. Let me acknowledge here at this point, though, Republicans have offered many ideas. We may yet offer ideas, understanding that this is dynamic. I'm not sure if we will offer floor amendments to this bill, but if we do, I would want them to be considered constructive and friendly amendments and not hostile. Now, to the members out there who wish to, or the members of the audience who wish to testify, our rules require that you identify yourselves and state your position on the bill, and that's all. We will not entertain any comments or observations. So please be very brief and then move sequentially.
Good morning. My name is Christina Boss-Hamilton. I represent UDW, AFSCME, Local 3930. That's 86,000 IHSS home care workers. We are here in strong support of the bill and thank the Senator for introducing it.
Thank you.
Chair and Member Sean South on behalf of the California Primary Care Association in strong support.
Kimberly Chen with the California Pan-Ethnic Health Network. While we haven't taken a position on this specific bill, we do support the tobacco tax and appreciate the resolution moving forward on the MCO tax.
Linda Way with Western Center on Law and Poverty in support of a MCO tax.
Christina Romero, Planned Parenthood Affiliates of California. We thank the author for bringing this forward. We're supportive of a tobacco tax and look forward to seeing how the bill works out.
Gary Passmore with the Congress of California Seniors. We are in a supportive amend position. I don't know whether that gives me an extra 10 or 15 seconds.
No, we just,
right.
you have an amendment to show.
Well, I distributed a letter. We're focused on the MCO tax portion of it, but we do support the tobacco tax and the proposals to deal with IHSS.
Thank you.
Robert Harris on behalf of the California Society of Addiction Medicine, California's addiction specialists, who strongly support the tobacco tax portion and the entire package.
Catherine Blakemore, Disability Rights California, in support of the package. It's the clearest path forward to a strong community safety net. We urge your yes vote. Thank you.
Tony Anderson, Director of the ARC California, also here as the chair of the Lanterman Coalition, which is the coalition of all developmental disability services and advocates in our community. We're here in support of a commitment, a firm, serious commitment to solving this public health crisis. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Jackie Dillard-Foss with the California Supported Living Network, and I'm here in support of a firm commitment to people with developmental disabilities. And thank you for your time.
Hello, my name is Linda Plord, Executive Director of Bayberry, Napa, Solana, Sonoma, and Lake Counties. I am in support of a firm commitment to fund services appropriately for people with developmental disabilities, and I support this bill. Thank you.
Good morning, Stacey Sasson with the STEP Agency here in Sacramento. I'm here to offer my gratitude to Senator Hernandez and my strong support of this legislation with commitment to the developmentally disabled community. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Diana Miller. I support people with developmental disabilities. I was turning my mic to a deaf person. That was really good. Hi, my name is Troy, and I am in support of people with developmental disabilities. Hi, my name is Dennis Smith. I really support people with developmental disabilities, and I work with people with developmental disabilities. Hello, my name is Des. We can't control what happens next year, but we can control what happens today. Please support and pass this bill.
Thank you for your interpreting.
Greg DeGere with the ARC and the United Cerebral Palsy California Collaboration. We support the bill just as we support your bill, Senator Nielsen, and Senator Stone's bill. We also support Senator Leno's and Senator McGuire's desire to put the DD money into a lockbox for next year, and the way to do that is with a continuous appropriation.
Nice to hear. Knowledge is our our bills too.
Lindsay Freitas with the American Lung Association in California in support.
Somebody on earth knows they're there.
Callie Hampt on behalf of the American Heart and American Stroke Association in support.
Dave Kiefer with SEIU UHW in support.
Megan Allred on behalf of the California Dental Association in support. Strong support specifically of the tobacco tax, but also fixing the MCO tax.
Mr. Chair and members, Terry Thomas on behalf of the California Association of Public Hospitals and Health Systems. We strongly support the tobacco tax portion of the bill, and we support the intent of the MCO portion, but defer to the parties involved on the mechanics of that. Thank you.
Jennifer Griffin with the Alpha Resource Center in Santa Barbara, supporting anything and everything that recognizes the importance of the rights of people with developmental disabilities.
Anyone else out there in support? Seeing none, we have an individual here to testify in opposition.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, members, good morning. David Wolf with the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association. We're opposed to this bill today. Members, look at me. Take a good long look, and you'll see that I sit before you today as someone here with a developmental disability. I have cerebral palsy. It's a permanent, lifelong disability, and it's not going to change. Members, I have friends that have benefited from the Land-Terman Act, so I know of what I speak here today. Republicans, Democrats, myself, we all want more funding for people with developmental disabilities. Every member in this room wants more funding. Now, perhaps this is a stupid question, but let me ask it anyway. If it is so important, why did we not prioritize more funding for this in the budget? Members, there was a willful, intentional decision that was made to fund new programs in this budget, like a state earned income tax credit, instead of funding people with developmental disabilities. And members, let's not make the argument here today that we're blaming the lack of funding on a surplus and a rainy day fund. We're talking $230 million out of a $115 billion budget. What is that, 0.0001% of the general fund budget? Plenty of money here to do this. And that, members, that really is the kicker of all this here today, right? $115 billion budget, a record budget in the state of California with a $6 billion surplus. And we can't fund services for people like me who are most in need of this funding. And instead, we have the audacity to sit here with 2 days left in the legislative session and push for billions of dollars of new taxes. It's not necessary, it's not appropriate, and I'd ask for a no vote.
Thank you. Next witness, let's just go to the left here.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair and members. Mira Morton here today on behalf of the California Chamber of Commerce, and regretfully, we must oppose SBX 214. The Chamber has a long-standing position that when taxes are indeed necessary, and we're not sure that they're necessary in this case, when they're needed to fund general programs, we have a strong preference for a broad-based tax that has a low rate, as low rate as possible, and that they be temporary if at all possible. And this proposal is problematic on all three fronts. First of all, it has two targeted tax increases in it. Actually, we would argue the MCO tax is fundamentally a new tax, even though it's being referred to by the same name as the one that's in place now, because that one imposes no net tax on any of the payers. It also has a variable rate, the MCO tax does, in this particular proposal. It can be adjusted, and in fact will be adjusted every year while the tax is in place, and it is a permanent tax. And so for all of those reasons, we have strong concerns with this. And in particular, we have concerns about the impact that we think this approach is going to have on healthcare affordability. And it's actually penalizing those responsible actors, those employers who are going out and continuing to purchase coverage for their employees And it's also imposing a penalty on individuals who are purchasing health care for their families by making that health care more expensive and burdening them with sole responsibility to maintain funding for other important government programs. We think that it's inappropriate to do this. We do appreciate that the dual tiers in this particular proposal are an effort to try to mitigate the impact that it would have on premiums and on the payers of the tax. However, it still creates a lot of inequities between the different payers, and the language still gives DHCS broad authority to adjust the tiers, adjust all aspects of the tax going forward. And again, it's open-ended. And the way that the tax amount is determined is also tied to a number that's going to be increasing. It's tied to the gross premiums for Medi-Cal plans. So we think that this is just fundamentally a problem. There's no way to guarantee that it won't burden people's healthcare premiums. We fully appreciate the difficulty that you all face in the situation that has happened with the change to the federal rules. We truly value and consider important the programs that are trying to be funded. But if in fact the general fund cannot support the current cost of these programs, much less their looming growth, and there will be several $1 billion more funds needed for the Medi-Cal program just to keep up with coming costs in the next 5 years.
Keep in mind we have 9 minutes for the whole group here.
Then we believe that that solution should be broad-based, low-rate, and temporary, if at all possible, not targeted on responsible employers and individual Californians. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dennis Sloper, representing the California Distributors Association. We are the taxpayer. The tax is on the distributor, not on the retailer, not on the consumer, which means that we have the inventory costs, the increased bad debt that always goes up with increased inventory costs. Black market, as Senator Morlock talked about, regressiveness, as Senator Morlock talked about. The tax is inappropriate for an ongoing funding of a specific program, and we oppose the bill.
Next, Nick.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. Nick Luizos on behalf of the California Association of Health Plans. To be fair to the author and the chair, we have not issued a letter on this at this time. So I can't say that we have a formal position on this bill today. However, I wanted to share several concerns that we do have. I do want to thank the author and the chair, as well as the administration, for the level of engagement in recent days of those talks have been helpful. And we do want to acknowledge the fact that the administration has bifurcated their January tax proposal in an effort to ameliorate the impact on the commercial markets. We would note that it's still an impact of hundreds of millions of dollars on private payers, notwithstanding some of the offsets that were discussed earlier in the hearing. So my comments are essentially relegated to what's in print in the bill today and to the MCO tax provision of the bill. I just wanted to point out some concerns. Despite the bifurcation of the tax, the tiered construct of the tax is very similar to what was presented in January. And so we have to point out some of the inherent flaws that kind of transfer from the January proposal to what's in the bill, which is that a few things. Number one, health plans that are competing in the same market would be paying different rates. So there's still some of those market dysfunction issues in the tiered approach. We are also concerned with the fact that under this bill, other programs other than Medi-Cal would be funded with the revenue generated by the tax. There does not appear to be a sunset in this bill of the tax, and it also allows the department to essentially change elements of the tax after it's been enacted, in essence adjusting the tax. We would also note that one thing that's very important to our members, if there was a deal on this issue, is that if CMS disapproved the tax, that it would turn off at the state level.
We've got one more witness in about 1 minute.
Okay. So I just want to say, in the spirit of this being a work in progress, we just wanted to note that we still have some significant concerns, both with what's in print and with what's being discussed with respect to the latest proposal from the department, but we do want to, continue the discussions with the senator, with the assembly, and with the administration, of course, and the committee members as we move forward. Thank you.
We have one.
Thank you. My name is Carrie Hess, and on behalf of the Smoke-Free Alternatives Trade Association, I'm here to oppose the tobacco tax bill that seeks to raise the tobacco tax, but also seeks to impose a tax on the distribution of electronic cigarettes based on wholesale costs at a rate determined annually that is equivalent to the cigarette tax rate, even including e-liquid that doesn't contain any nicotine. Taxation of e-cigarettes, as proposed in this measure, would do a disservice to the goal of improving public health, specifically by looking to tax e-cigarette and vapor products on par with traditional combustible products. Such a taxation would undermine the beneficial shift away from adult use of combustible tobacco. For that reason, we oppose this measure.
Thank you very much, all of you witnesses in opposition. We have 3 out in the audience to comment.
Mike Roby with the California Manufacturers and Technology Association.
Witness, could you hang in here, though? We may have some questions.
In opposition.
Okay, thank you.
Peter Blocker with the California Taxpayers Association, also in opposition.
Melanie Cuevas on behalf of Enjoy Electronic Cigarette Company, also in opposition.
Are there questions from the members of the committee of any of the opposition? Senator Bell.
Yeah, relative to position of some of the groups, are they opposed to the funding through the MCO tax of the programs for developmentally disabled?
Yeah, Senator, our members believe that any revenue generated by a Medi-Cal managed care tax or a managed care tax in general, those proceeds should directly benefit the Medi-Cal program.
So you're against the funding of programs for the developmentally disabled?
Well, you know, the decisions made relative to those budgets are not within our power. We would say that our plans operate in Medi-Cal.
No, you raised the issue, so
yeah.
I'm asking.
So one of our principles
position.
is that the funding should go to Medi-Cal.
Okay, so you're against it. Okay. One thing, just knowing the programs for developmentally disabled, if the system collapses, which is getting close to being collapsed, I would predict that the private insurers would have to pick up the cost of numerous services and programs that are covered under the Affordable Care Act and other laws that would burden private insurers with additional cost. I think that's true. I think most people would agree with that. So I would caution them to be opposing or seeing the programs for developmentally disabled collapse. I think it's something you ought to reflect on and maybe be concerned about in your discussions between yourselves, because I believe that if those programs collapsed, you will find that people will go to their families' insurance providers to seek care and health care under the eligibility requirements of the Affordable Care Act. So I just, you know, I think our department does serve the private as well as public insured public in California. It's a general benefit to the entire state of California, all the people living in California.
All right. Do any of you wish to comment as to that, please?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Actually, on behalf of the Chamber, we don't have any concerns with funding any of the programs that are at issue here. They are all critical programs. They are lifelines for people. But we would say that if they cannot be funded as part of the general fund budget, which they may be able to be funded that way, but if they cannot, then it needs to be funded through something that is more broad-based, a lower rate, and a general applicability tax, because they are general benefits for the public.
Okay. Senator Walk had a question.
Thank you. I don't have a question, actually. I just have a very brief comment, and I would like to move the bill. I think the hour being 11 o'clock on Thursday, before we're going to leave, I think it's really important to allow for these last-minute negotiations to continue. So I will move the bill, and I would hope that we would be forthwith about that.
We had a co-motion here. We'll
I would like to second her wonderful
Mitchell
motion.
and Walk. Did Senator Pan have a question?
I will defer to the motion, and if we can go ahead to a vote, that'd be great.
Okay.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I also would like to move this along. I think we've exhausted the process, and we need to call for a vote.
The committee will note that it's not a unanimous motion from all members of the committee, but most members of the committee. Senator Hernandez, would you like to say some closing remarks, sir?
Chair, and again, thank you for allowing me to present. So we have a special session that was called. I'm trying to address what was in that, which is to look at the MCO, but more importantly as well, is to look at additional revenues. So we have two entities. Number one, which I think is very important, to make sure the reauthorization of the MCO tax. And again, I'd like to thank the administration, but more importantly also thank the plans, because they've been at the table and we have been working diligently to come to a resolution. So yes, I agree that that money should be for Medi-Cal, but I would also maybe disagree that in the sense that the DD community is paid through the Medi-Cal system. Now, with regard to the tobacco tax, I really believe that that's a mechanism that we can look at generating additional revenue for increasing our Medi-Cal reimbursement rates, looking at our residency programs, and looking at smoking cessation, et cetera. And I think that we all agree that those are things from both sides of the aisle that need to be addressed. We may disagree on how we go about it. But I think it's extremely important that we look at this. Yes, the hours are running short. We have less than a few days. But if you were to ask me a month ago, I would have given you maybe a 20% shot of maybe coming to an MCO agreement, whereas the conversations we've had with the plans and the administration, I'm much more optimistic, and I think we are closer, and I hope that we will resolve that within the next few days. And the members, with that, I respectfully ask for an aye vote.
Thank you. Senator Hernandez, the Secretary will please call the roll. This is a motion due pass to the Appropriations Committee, and it appears there will be amendments considered along the way.
Hernandez?
Aye.
Hernandez, aye. Morel?
No.
Morel, no. Anderson? No. Anderson, no. Bell? Aye. Bell, aye. Hall? Hall, aye. Leno? Leno, aye. McGuire? Aye. McGuire, aye. Mitchell?
Aye.
Mitchell, aye. Monning?
Aye.
Monning, aye. Morlock?
No.
Morlock, no. Nielsen?
No.
Nielsen, no. Pan?
Aye.
Pan, aye. Wolk? Wolk, aye.
What is the vote?
Vote is 9-4.
Vote is 9-4. Motion due pass prevails.
So I'd like to real quickly thank everybody for being here. We're going to conclude the business of the day, and we are adjourned.